our latest in our Make It in Maryland Manufacturing Spotlight series. Today, I am really excited because I'm joined by my good friend, Mick Arnold from Arnold Packaging and Automation, as well as Cailin Mazan. They've got a great story, been a big supporter of the MEP program, but they're also one of the long-standing companies here in Maryland that is really reinventing themselves and doing great things. Mick, you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself and your team who's kind enough to join us today?
Yeah, I'm Mick Arnold. I'm the president of Arnold Packaging and Arnold Automation. We're an 89-year-old manufacturer of packaging materials, and most recently have started a division focused on productivity called Arnold Automation, where we are working with manufacturers and e-commerce distributors to help them get more product out the door, whether that's be picking and packing on the e-commerce side or manufacturing. And I'm joined today by one of our really talented mechanical engineers who supports our automation business, Cailin Mazan.
Morning, Cailin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been working at Arnold?
So I've been working at Arnold just about a year now. I came straight out of school. I studied mechanical engineering at University of Delaware. And I always had a big interest in 3D printing, robotics, did a lot of work with that in high school and in college. So it's really cool to be able to do it in my professional career now.
Awesome. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. So Mick, an 89-year-old company, I think it was your dad or your granddad's business that was started almost 100 years ago, 90 years ago. Talk to me a little bit about how the business has evolved in the time that you've been involved with the company.
Boy, it's evolved a lot. I got involved when I was very young. I was the kid that was going to work with Dad on Columbus Day and Martin Luther King Day. When we were off of school, Mick didn't hang out. Mick went to work. So I always hung around the plant, and I was always fascinated by making things and ran around biting the ankles of our engineers, making boomerangs and anything you could think of that I saw in my travels. I somehow wanted to make out of wood or toilet paper cores or you name it. So I always got out of bed in the morning for the curiosity component and the innovation component. Packaging just happened to be what I was around and linked to. So we've always made things. We've always developed and created IP on the packaging side of the business. That would be, containers for shipping bombs, missiles, weapons. But a few years ago, we noticed this crunch in labor, and we had always been on the back of the line, or what we would call in our industry end of line. That would be things like case sealing, case erecting, strapping. And our customers were pleased with what we were doing, and they kept asking us to go upstream. Can you do assembly? Can you take your skills that you have on the back of the line, and can you come up into helping us fill the gaps where we can't quite get enough labor, or our productivity is off? We're not getting as much product out the door as we need. So we took one of our core pillars, as we call them, which is increased productivity, and we really drilled down on it and decided to create a division that would focus exclusively on productivity. And those are things like robotics, autonomous guided vehicles, vision, but productivity being the key. I think a lot of times people get stuck on this word automation and not realizing that automation is really a strategy, productivity is a strategy and automation is a tactic. So we focused on productivity first, and that's the idea of understanding the difference between input and output. So we focused on that and started to build a team, which took some time. That division will be 5 years old in April, but it really took us some time to get the right players on the team, between mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, industrial engineers, controls engineers, all the people that were going to be able to do something as simple as, sell a machine, which we had always done historically, all the way through inventing pieces of equipment that didn't exist in the name of productivity. So we've dug into that really hard, and it's right in line with our core because 100% of our automation customers buy packaging. So there's a ton of synergies there. A lot of times we are still working at end of line. We're doing productivity because, love it or hate it, packaging is considered a non-value add activity in the manufacturing world. So anytime you can make it more productive, that would be keep your people and improve the output, or reduce your people and keep the same output, or likely both. Rarely, if ever, are we sending people away. What we're doing is we're pulling on both ends, and we are reducing input and we are increasing output to affect the productivity quotient. So that's the track. And I just follow the demand, right? People are saying, can you? To me, that equals demand. So we're always looking to fill demand. And especially if it's something that we love or want to dive deep into. So that's the evolution that got us from, making animal fat glue in 1933 with my great-grandfather, actually, all the way till today, where we're deploying 6-axis robotics.
That's awesome. So you mentioned something that I think is critical for all of our manufacturers here in Maryland, which is the people, right? And so Cailin, you went to school for engineering. I take it you probably had an interest in tinkering and making things and saw yourself doing that. But how did you end up at a 90-year-old packaging company?
Yeah, similar to what Mick said, when I was a kid, it wasn't, oh yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I want to build it. So I always, I wired my dollhouse with lights and, everything moved on its own because I wanted to see if I could do it. And that's kind of what led me here is, Mick also mentioned how, we're taking stuff that's never been made before and just, can you do this? Sure, let's figure it out. So that's kind of what drew me here is, I wanted to see this is a problem. Can I make something that does it for you?
I love it. So, Mick and I have known each other for years and he and I can nerd out over talking through these things. But what do you tell your friends, your family, when they ask, hey, who do you work for? What do you do? How do you explain what it is you do?
That's a good question. It's a little bit hard to explain when you say like, I work for a packaging company. And they're like, that doesn't make sense. You're an engineer. So going back and explaining, there's a lot more to packaging and getting stuff in the packages than you think, than I even thought of before I got here. So when I, applied to work here, I was like, they have a cool robot in their shop. I want to do that. And moving up from that to like, how can I design something that, makes that robot do something a human could do or make it easier for a human to do that.
Did you expect when you ran into Mick or the team from Arnold, did you expect to see everything behind the doors that they were doing with the robots, with the automation, with the vision systems? Did you expect that when you walked into the company the first time?
Yeah, they were pretty upfront about this is what we do. We do cool stuff. You need to keep up. And it's been going from there. There was not really a lot of introductory of, you don't know what you're doing. We'll babysit you for now. It's thrown into the deep end. We need this done. Can you do it?
Awesome. So Mick, I'm gonna bounce back to you for a second. The way you explain what you all are doing on the automation side, I think is really critical to the future of manufacturing in Maryland, and that it's all about productivity, right? So as a stakeholder in the Maryland manufacturing community and somebody that's been pretty outspoken for where we need to go, what do you see for the future of manufacturing? How can we be competitive? How can we put a flag in the ground in Maryland and be the state that is attracting companies that are doing really cool and innovative things?
Well, I'll start by saying I don't think the timing's ever been better for the United States and Maryland specifically to take a much larger role in manufacturing. The pandemic exposed the country and certainly the state of Maryland for all of the things that we do not make and all of the things that we are reliant for other countries and states to produce for us. And that puts us at a sizable disadvantage. When you can't get critical goods because you have lost that critical manufacturing infrastructure, it's a challenge. I mean, at least you're going to pay a premium for them. At worst, you're not going to be able to get them at all. And if you think about where Baltimore came from, Baltimore was the beast of manufacturing. If you just wind it back 100 years, 20s, 30s, and think about companies like Westinghouse, Bethlehem Steel, General Electric, Western Electric, the Glen L. Martin company that made bombers. I mean, we were the beast of manufacturing. And in the last century, that has gone elsewhere. It's gone to other states, and certainly it's gone to other countries. So if you look at things now, the pressures of manufacturing and just business in general, freight costs have never been higher. A container that used to cost about $4,000 to move now costs about $23,000 to move. If you look at the risk, if you're making things in China, you have risk to IP. You have incredibly long supply chains, which have your capital tied up because you own those goods while they are transporting from Asia or wherever, or India, two of the largest manufacturers on the planet now. You own those goods, so your capital is tied up. It's not as flexible or accessible. So now's a great time, but it comes back to the word, and I think you could probably make a drinking game out of it. Every time Mick Arnold says productivity, but it is the truth, right? I mean, we can sit around and whine about, labor rates over there, or labor rates in Mexico, or labor rates in Malaysia. That's just one part of the quotient, right? You have to get your output aligned such that you can compete globally. And it's not for every industry, right? We're not going to get back into making shirts anytime soon here, things like that. But there are any number of products that have gone overseas or have gone offshore that are ripe to come back, where the people that make them are tired of IP theft. They're tired of completely unsustainable and inconsistent freight costs, where you've got a 5x without warning shift in your cost to move goods from here to there. And onshoring it is all of the security that you're looking for. If recently you were, if you're sitting with an investment in Russia, you're in trouble, right? And who knows when these geopolitical events are going to happen. So the real easy answer is to stop making it there and start making it here. But we've got to do things to improve and lean into the productivity aspect, right? And people need to not be so hung up on this labor thing or putting a person out of a job, because it doesn't work that way. While no one was watching, unemployment went from 10% at the end of 2008. It's back down to 3.8%, and it's probably going to keep dropping towards that 3.4% that we saw pre-pandemic. So no one is losing a job. They're all going to be redeployed and hopefully upskilled into a job that pays them more and is of more value. So we've got to get the productivity quotient. And yes, that does involve machinery, mechanized. It involves software. It involves 3D printing, right? It's not just about robots taking over the world. It's anything but. Robots are just a tactic in this very long playbook of opportunities to be more productive. And the thing that's beautiful about it now is the cost curves are bending at a rate that we've never seen before, whether it is 6-axis robotics or vision or autonomous guided vehicles. These costs are coming down because there's so much response to the industry. And let me tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from e-commerce. Manufacturing hasn't necessarily shifted that much in the country, but the demand for e-commerce and e-commerce distribution is significant. And there's a lot of crossovers between the two because it's still just about productivity. So whether that's productivity to make something faster, or that's something to pick, pack, and ship something faster, they still have the same core. So those investments, whether that be scanning a part to make sure it's accurate, or scanning a barcode to get a shipping label to the right location, they're all rooted in the same core. So e-commerce has hypercharged automation, and in the process driven costs down. So what that means is that smaller manufacturers and mid-sized manufacturers now have the ability to make reasonable investments with reasonable risk, and risk being a really scary thing for small manufacturers, especially ones that may have leadership that are from the boomer generation, right? They're a little bit older. This stuff is new. It might be scary. It might be something that they're just not comfortable with. So there's a way now that we can position these conversations to explain productivity, and then also explain the particular tactic that we suggest that they're going to deploy to get from making X number of widgets to X plus, and do it with X number of people, and maybe fewer, maybe the same. But what we're going to do is we're going to improve their output such that each one of those incremental dollars of new performance or new productivity goes right to their bottom line. And that gives them the ability to compete more effectively and ensures their future of making stuff here.
Excellent. Thank you. So Cailin, I want to come back to you a little bit. So Mick just talked a lot about the technology in the future and where we need to get to and why. He also rattled off a half a dozen companies that you probably don't remember or were gone before you got into this. And one of the challenges we have in Maryland is around this idea of the image of manufacturing, right? People see the Domino Sugar sign in the Inner Harbor and they think of McCormick, but beyond that, they're not quite sure what manufacturing is. And so 2 questions for you. One, what is manufacturing in Maryland to you? And then the hard question is, how do we get more people like yourself excited about manufacturing and excited about the opportunities that we have?
So manufacturing in Maryland, to me at this point, is Arnold Packaging. I mean, this is the manufacturer I've seen, that I've worked with. I live near the Domino's sign, so that's a big, iconic thing for me. But the people that I've met through working here, the companies that I've been able to, help them improve their productivity, I get to see how much stuff is actually made in Maryland at this point and help them to start making more and bring more of their products out of here. We can, with bringing in robotics and automated systems, we improve the productivity of the people who are already working here. So the more products they can make, the more stuff comes out of Maryland instead of somewhere else. And to get more people, like me interested, is have more people like me working here. There's not a lot of people that are 20-something girls in engineering in manufacturing in Maryland. So to have more people like me come into companies like Arnold Packaging, it shows other people that you can do it, and it's a good place to work. It's fun. You get to do new stuff, and just, doing outreach and bringing more people in.
So what would you tell that 18 or 19-year-old girl who's considering engineering or considering going into manufacturing? What advice would you give her?
And don't be scared of it. There's a lot of stigma against girls in engineering, girls in manufacturing, construction, any male-dominated field, any field where there might be some sort of physical labor. A lot of time girls are dismissed or told, don't do that. I would say definitely do it. If you're interested in it, talk to people like me, talk to people like Mick, find someone who's in, down and dirty with the industry you're looking at. Even if you're not that interested in it, take a tour, talk to someone, and you might find out that it's really cool and you'll get to.
I love that. As the dad of 4 daughters, I love that. And I know Mick's got a couple daughters too. So, I think you're a great role model for girls, young people in general, just to get involved. So what's the coolest project you've gotten to work on? What's the coolest thing you've done in your year at Arnold?
We've actually had a lot of projects this year, so it's kind of hard to pick one. Getting to learn how to program these big 6-axis robots, I can take it from doing nothing to moving parts around, and it's super cool to just be able to do any of that. And we've got a couple systems where maybe there aren't robots, but there's a whole bunch of moving pieces that weren't there, and I designed how they work, and now they're a functioning machine. So that's pretty cool to see.
Awesome. Well, Mick, any thoughts, anything you want to add or share, just kind of in general about manufacturing in Maryland, or about Arnold, or about the great talented team that you have?
Yeah, I think Maryland is in a very strong and unique position to take a stand and really compete for manufacturing. We've got things like Trade Point Atlantic, which is the largest piece of industrial land in North America, which is being rebuilt in the old Bethlehem Steel, Bethlehem Ship parcel of land, which is where we recently relocated to. So we have land resources and that type of infrastructure. We have one of the strongest education systems in the country. If you watch CNBC, who ranks the top states for business every year, well, Maryland overall performs pretty mediocre. They're generally exactly in the middle of the pack, 24, 25. What they do get strong ratings for are labor and education. So we do have very strong labor here, and we do have very strong education between Hopkins, UMBC, University of Maryland. So we've got a lot of really talented kids. Delaware, where Cailin came from, right up the street. Cailin's counterpart graduated from Maryland. So we've got a very strong education system, and we are creating a lot of really bright young minds. The challenge for us is to create enough jobs for them so we don't lose them. If there isn't somewhere for them to go and flex their brain, then they have no choice but to go to another state. And our bordering states are doing a very good job. We've got to be sensitive to the fact that Pennsylvania, namely Pittsburgh, where Carnegie Mellon is doing a lot of work in industrial automation and industrial robotics. So Maryland is positioned very well. And if you look at some of the other bordering states like New Jersey, which struggles with incredibly high taxation, incredibly high cost of living, cost of land and cost per square foot is going up exponentially. Those are opportunities for us to attract and lure businesses to Maryland, where we have a port. We've got a deep water port at Trade Point Atlantic. We should be the booming town that we once were in the 20s and 30s if we do it correctly. It's going to require a couple of things. The support of the Maryland state government is going to have to get involved, because the reason that companies, for example, in New Jersey aren't racing to Maryland is because it's really hard to move manufacturing infrastructure. There's something about manufacturing is that it's really, really sticky, because you make investments in, pick it, right? Whether it's water purification, drying systems. If you go into these plants, you look at the infrastructure inside, and there are pipes and wires, and they're running all over the place. That's not something that you easily disrupt and move to another location and take on that risk and cost unless there's a hell of a good reason. That's where the state of Maryland could come in and provide resources, whether that be pure financial cash resources to come in, whether that be through tax incentives or things to move those manufacturing facilities here. Maryland is in a great position to pull manufacturing. So far, there hasn't been that much. We pulled distribution. If you look at Trade Point Atlantic, for example, you'll find Home Depot and Under Armour and 4 million square feet of Amazon. But you won't find any significant manufacturers yet, but I think that is going to change, especially in the option of reshoring. If we start to make a move here on reshoring some technologies, for example, like gloves, there is a manufacturer coming into TPA of nitrile gloves for PPE. If you don't have infrastructure here and you're looking to reshore, why not come to Maryland, right? That's where we should be targeting. You don't have infrastructure in New Jersey, you don't have a plant somewhere else, and you're looking to bring things back to the United States that we desperately need, like PPE that we got exposed for in the middle of the pandemic, then you should be looking to land in Maryland. And Maryland needs to do a very aggressive job of finding those opportunities and making a hell of a sales pitch to get out ahead and show all of the things we have as it relates to labor and education and infrastructure. We're in the middle of the country on a port. Why in the world wouldn't we be looking like we looked in the 1920s and 30s, 40s, 50s at some point along the way? As for our team, we continue to grow. I think we've onboarded somebody every Monday, if not this year, pretty darn close. And we've got another one coming up this Monday. And it is one of the brightest collection of mechanical engineers, electrical controls engineers, and they just solve. Whatever the problem is, it's just a group of really smart fixers, and they're looking to understand what's being done now and then deploy all of these awesome weapons that we have called vision and scanning and robotics and autonomous guided vehicles. How do we take this process that exists today and measure its productivity? How do we look at all of these options that we have? And then how do we build a compelling business case to make the customer want to invest in productivity and give them a better chance of staying here? So everything I just said for manufacturers not coming to Maryland is true. If we can enhance the investment, if we can support the investment, either at the state level, money is very inexpensive right now, so it's a great time to invest. Each one of those things that a manufacturer invests in their facility makes it stickier and makes it harder for them to leave and pick up and go to another country or to another state, especially with things like minimum wage. When we're pushing in the direction of $15 and our neighboring states are still at $7.75 or $8, that minimum wage component is something that's very attractive. I'm not sure how relevant it is today, just because you can't compete for real talent at $8. That's just not a thing. So regardless of what the government mandates for minimum, the market's mandating something significantly different. So that's a good thing for Maryland. If you just did it based on minimum wage, we would be at a decided disadvantage, but we're not, because the market is demanding something different. And there's productivity that we can generate here that makes that $15, $16, $17, $18 per hour person. And by the way, that's what we're talking about in manufacturing. These aren't entry-level jobs. And if they are, they're just for a moment. And then you're working yourself into a career with fantastic income. You know, I mean, if you look at welding and some of the things that go on in the machining world, you've got jobs that on shift 2 and shift 3 are pushing 6 figures. These are careers. They are not jobs. So Maryland is positioned beautifully if we will execute and we will work hard and we will compete. And Arnold Automation is in excellent shape with the talent that we have and the partners that we have in technology to help those manufacturers get more productive and stay here.
Awesome. So I do want to wrap it up and be aware of everybody's time. But Mick, you just hit on something that I think is spot on. When people ask me what manufacturing is in Maryland, your description of your team just answered that, right? When people ask me what manufacturing is in Maryland, as the Maryland MVP, we get to travel all over the state and see lots of different manufacturers. And I always say we're problem solvers, right? We're really innovative problem solvers that are using our tools. We're using our techniques and our methods to build really cool stuff that are solving people's problems. And you know, I think I'm inspired. I'm hopeful, Cailin, by your story, and Mick, by what Arnold's doing. I think the future is bright for manufacturing in Maryland. And so thank you all for participating today.